Pride and Prejudice, Chapter 7, second video. So as usual, let me ask you some questions. First, in what kind of occasion could you entail something? All right. Answer. You could entail something if you were, for example, writing a will. You know, a will, a testament. Question. What should you do, I don't know, in default of I don't know, food in your house? Of course it would be very strange to say that it's too formal, but well, what should you do in default of food in your house? In default of food in your house, you should order some over the phone, right? Or, I don't know, iFood and those things. What would happen, my next question, to Mr. Bennet's fortune or property in default of heirs? Answer. In default of heirs, his property would go to a distant relation. Okay. Question. Who are your heirs? Answer. Well, that's a personal answer, but in my case, I have so far, 3 heirs, right? I have my youngest son, Arthur. I have my daughter, Leticia, and I have my son, Victor. Maybe in the future. The idea is, if I can get more, if I expand my property, and then I can bestow my property on more heirs, then I'll have more heirs. Because I would like to have more kids. Well, next question. What about the girl's mother's fortune? Couldn't that supply for their needs? Answer. Yes, it could, but it would ill supply for their needs. All right? It wasn't good enough. Question. So if the fortune wasn't good enough, it means that the mother, Mrs. Bennet, was kind of poor? Answer. No, she had an ample fortune. You know, it was more than enough for her. Because of course we're not talking about 5 people like the 5 girls, and we're talking about a woman who has a husband with a good fortune, right? Question. What's the difference between, what was the difference, nowadays people don't use it anymore, what was the difference between there and thither, here and hither? Keep in mind, I didn't say it in the last video, but you can pronounce thither or thither, all right? Well, so what is the difference? Answer. Well, thither and hither would be there and here with movement. Mm-hmm. Question. How often do you go to the milliner's shop? Answer. Well, I don't know your, let's say, shopping habits, but I believe you have never been to the milliners, right? The milliners. I mean, like a place just to buy hats. I have never been. I have never seen a place like that, you know, in Brazil. And my next question is, how often did the girls go to the milliner's shop? Answer. They went to the milliner's shop 3 or 4 times a week. Yes, 3 or 4 times a week. Question. What did the girls contrive? Keep in mind, I will read one more example with contrive because I didn't have that much time last video. I gave you, she contrived ways to amuse the children. I'll give you more definition example. Contrive is to plan with cleverness or ingenuity, devise. One more, to invent or fabricate, especially by improvisation. For example, they contrived a swing from hanging vines. I promise I'll go back to the book, but I need to teach you vine. Vine is like a plant that looks like a rope, you know? Be careful, because vine is not just for vineyard. Okay, vineyard, a plantation of grape, we call vineyard, all right? And of course, in a vineyard, the grapes, the bunches, right? They grow in vines, right? Vine can be that, of course, but it can also be, you know, the very thick ones Tarzan used to, I don't know, move in the forest, right? That's a vine as well. Well, why am I telling you that? Because of my example. They contrived a swing from hanging vines. Imagine this huge old tree. From the tree, it hung some vines. So they got two very resistant and strong vines. And then they contrived a swing. You know, a swing like, whoa. Whoa, for children and adults to play as well. It's very nice to play in a swing. One more. And now we have a slightly different meaning for contrive. To plan with an evil intent. Okay? Scheme is another way to say that. They contrived a plot to seize power. Next one. To bring about as by scheming, managing. All of those things, I'm telling you all of those meanings because they're very close to each other. We could even, depending on the dictionary, say they're the same meaning with some variation. Actually, it is, you know. The dictionary is just showing you the variation. The next one. To bring about. But I've already told. So the example. Somehow, she contrived to get past the guards unnoticed. Somehow she contrived to get past the guards unnoticed, right? Well, my question was actually, what did the girls contrive? The girls always contrived a way to get some news out of their aunt, right? Question. Why were the girls so happy? Answer. Because the militia regiment was in the neighborhood and they were staying at Meryton. They were using Meryton as the headquarters. I didn't put headquarters there in our list, but I think headquarters is okay, right? The headquarters of a company, for example, is the main... We don't call branch because, you know, the branches are from the headquarters, right? So the center. For example, CCA's headquarters is in Rio de Janeiro. But you can have headquarters, you know, for the militia as well, the place where they are staying, right? Okay, so going on. Their visits to Mrs. Phillips, remember that Mr. Bennet's sister married to a Mr. Phillips, so therefore she is Mrs. Phillips now, right? Their visits to Mrs. Phillips were now productive of the most interesting intelligence. Every day added something to their knowledge of the officers' names and connections. Their lodgings, the places where they were standing, right, they were sleeping, were not long a secret, and at length they began to know the officers themselves. At length, meaning as time went by. Okay, so they knew where the guys were staying, and as time went by, they started to get to know the guys themselves. Mr. Phillips visited them all. And this opened to his nieces a store of felicity unknown before. They could talk of nothing but officers, and Mr. Bingley's large fortune, the mention of which gave animation to their mother, was worthless in their eyes when opposed to the regimentals of an ensign. Well, I can't not laugh, at the girls. I just, put my hand on my head and say, Jesus, these girls. But let's try to understand those girls, right? I don't know. They were excited. They can get a husband. It's a lot of men. It's really strange for me. I'm not comfortable with the situation. Mainly with these two youngest, they seem, well, let's not judge them too much, all right? The book will judge them for us. So that's okay. So keep in mind that the mother was much more worried about somebody as Mr. Bingley because he had a fortune, but the girls were worried about the regimentals. Take a look. Regimentals, be careful because regiment is like a group of soldiers and etc. But regimentals is the uniform of a particular regiment. Okay, military dress. So was worthless in their eyes when opposed to the regimentals of an ensign. What is ensign? Ensign is a standard or banner as of a military unit. Each military unit has a banner, and they were worried about, the uniforms and it, basically about the men there. After listening one morning to their effusion, like their enthusiasm, on this subject, Mr. Bennet coolly observed, "From all that I have collected by your manner of talking, you must be two of the silliest girls in the country. I have suspected it some time, but now I'm convinced." I don't know if it was too harsh on the girls, but maybe I would think the same. I don't know. Maybe, you spend so much time and so much energy, right? Okay, maybe they are two of the silliest girls in the country. But maybe there are a lot of silly girls as these girls here, so two of the silliest, but maybe this group of the silliest is a huge group of people, right? I don't think Lizzie is here. I'm completely sure she is not. And I don't think Jane, of course, Jane would never be in a group like this. And Mary is the one, keep in mind, probably she's reading and practicing the piano or something, so she can think she's better than her sisters. Keep in mind. Let's keep the 5 personalities in mind. Okay, so remember, he suspected that they were two of the silliest girls in the country, but now he's sure. Catherine was disconcerted and made no answer, but Lydia, with perfect indifference, continued to express her admiration of Captain Carter, in her hope of seeing him in the course of the day, as he was going to the next morning to London. Remember that Catherine is the second youngest, right? The youngest, if I'm not wrong, I don't think I'm wrong. The youngest is Lydia, right? So Lydia, even with her father's lecture, continue thinking about this Captain Carter.